What's going on, everyone? Indy here with Ultimate Tool Reviews. Now, if you saw my video last week, I think I did it on Wednesday or Thursday, I just got in the all-new Hikoki, or Metabo HPT here in the States, the WH36DC. It's known as in the States as the Metabo HPT Bolt is their new impact driver. As well, around the same time, Makita came out with their all-new XDT19. So, I've been looking to pick up, the latest Hikoki, Metabo HPT, whatever you want to call it, and do a comparison versus the 19. Well, I finally got them both in, I got them tested out, and let's give it a shot and see which one comes out on top. Alright, so let's start off by talking about the Hikoki a little bit here. So same exact model number as what you'd find in the US. Other than that, it's just going to say Metabo HPT on the side. There's really going to be no difference other than the colors. If you want to see how I picked out the different colors, I actually ordered this one from Amazon Japan. I'll leave a link to the video in the description of how to buy tools from Japan. You can get the Hikoki and Makita from Japan. But this is actually not made in Japan no matter where you buy it. It's still going to be made in China. So that's going to be the one difference there, where if you do buy the Makita, which would be the TD172 in Japan, it would actually be made in Japan. So this one's actually the US version, and this one is going to be made in China. So they're both pretty on even ground here. We've got the Hikoki is going to be the multi-volt, so 36-volt tool. Makita is still the 18-volt tool. So this is the 2.5 amp hour multi-volt battery, or 5 amp hour at 18 volts. And of course, I've got the Makita with a 5 amp hour 18-volt battery. So this is even of batteries as you're going to get between these two tools. All right, so let's talk about features with these two tools. So really curious to see which one is going to be a little bit larger, a little bit smaller. They're both extremely similar impacts. Yeah, it looks like the Hikoki is going to be just ever so slightly smaller. Actually, the Hikoki is going to be at about 4.6 inches, while the Makita actually is just going to be ever so slightly at 4.56 inches. So I guess I was wrong there, but I've had them side by side, but they are very, very similar. This actually review is going to be quite interesting because these two impact drivers are extremely similar, but unfortunately they also suffer from some of the same downsides. And one of the biggest downsides of both these impact drivers is the Hikoki. You cannot buy the Metabo HPT version in the US tool only. You have to buy it in a kit. It's a $300 kit. One of the most expensive impact drivers you can buy in the States here. Now that title has now been taken by Makita XGT, who now has an impact driver that is over $400 tool with just like 2 batteries, so pretty expensive there. However though, the Makita XDT19 is still not available tool only. As of filming this, you can now pick up the kit with 2 batteries, 2 5s, on Amazon for about $380. So the Makita is definitely more expensive. However though, if you want to go in the route where you don't get a warranty on these tools, you can buy the Makita on eBay, open box, from someone who pulls it out of one of the larger kits. You can buy them for around 90 to 120 bucks. And then the Hikoki you can get on Amazon Japan for about $120. I had a coupon for mine. We add in shipping, it's about $130 total for the Hikoki. And I picked up 119 on eBay for about 90 bucks. So very, very similar in the price, but you cannot get them in a legitimate way where you'd have a warranty for pretty much under $300. It's not really possible, which is really, really frustrating to not be able to get these tools by themselves for a relatively good price. So they both kind of suffer from that same exact issue. All right, let's check weight of the Hikoki. The Hikoki is definitely super light. We're at 1 pound, 14.4 ounces on the Hikoki. Of course, that's going to be tool only. And for the Makita, 1.141 ounces on the Makita, so not too bad there. Yeah, so the Makita is ever so slightly lighter, which is interesting there. Now let's check it with batteries on. 3 pounds, 6.7 ounces. And our Makita is going to be 3 pounds, 4.8 ounces. Again, Makita would be the winner here for weight and size, of course. However, though, the Hikoki is still a 36-volt tool, so keep that in mind. They're very, very similar here on paper. So if we talk about the specs of the Hikoki, of course it's going to be called, the triple hammer bolt. It is a triple hammer still with the E motor. It does have some nice little bit of selection down here. I do like this selection down here. I'm not sure exactly what it means by the app down there. Get this light off, there we go. By the app on this one, but we've got small screw, long screw, we've got a bolt mode, and then we've got a self-tapping mode. Well, the bolt mode also has a flashing mode, and that self-tapping mode is more of a ramp up. Whereas if you put it in the long screw mode, it's going to be purely just a go as fast as you can. Here's the short screw mode. Of course, that's going to be your low power mode. Here's your long screw mode, which is basically your high power mode. So right to power. Let's see here. So we're in the bolt mode. That is solid. Let's put that bolt mode flashing now. Don't really see any difference in speed there. I'll figure that out. I'll put that in the comments below, or I'll put that in the description below when I figure that out. All right, so let's talk about the differences in the specs between the Hikoki and the Makita. So the Hikoki is going to take the win with the most power at 1,903 inch-pounds of torque. Now the Makita actually is a little strange because it went down in power compared to the XDT19, the previous model. So the all-new model now has 1,590 inch-pounds. So Hikoki is definitely going to win in power by far here. Not a huge difference, it's only a little over about 200 inch-pounds or so, not so much power of a difference there, but that will make the difference when you're driving in larger fasteners. Now, I showed you some of the settings on the Hikoki as well. Only one I forgot to show you was, of course, the light settings. So we've got a couple light settings, basically a full off, and I've got just when the tool's on, it'll then turn off briefly after, as well as a light mode that keeps the light on for quite a while. Now, I will say I definitely like the controls on the 19 a lot better, and let me show you why. Whereas the Hikoki has, of course, the 4 settings, well, technically 5 settings there. On the specs, it says 5 settings, so that flashing mode is a setting. I much prefer the Makita. Not just because I like the settings better, but I do like the bolt removal mode, which is really nice. And basically that is going to be, if I hit that button over here and I go in reverse, it'll stop it for me even if I'm holding on the trigger so that bolt doesn't fly right off, which is really nice. Now, I will say I do like the Makita, so we're in speed 4 out of 5. Now let's say I'm doing, removing a couple of fasteners, but now I have a fastener that's going to be really slow. I can still change that setting right here without having to worry about taking my hand and pressing the settings down here. There's a little mode here that can change speed settings very quickly. That is really, really convenient to have. I much prefer that design over the Hikoki. And these buttons they're not the easiest to press either. You really got to put some force into each one. So having that little mode selection button up here is absolutely fantastic. Now we talk about the LED lighting up here. So the Hikoki has a full tri-LED, while the Makita has the dual LED. In my opinion, both are quite similar. The Hikoki definitely puts out more light just because that third LED, and they're both about the same brightness as far as I can tell using them both. So it's not a huge difference between both of them, although I do prefer the Hikoki design over the Makita design. However, though, the Makita does have a glow-in-the-dark, basically, ring on it, and that is a really nice little feature to have. It acts as like a bumper, as well as another way to also find the tool in the dark. Even if the lights have gone out, you can still see it in the dark. So that is really nice to have on the Makita. All right, other than power, there are some other specs on these tools. Of course, the Hikoki is going to be slightly taller than the Makita, whereas the Makita is definitely winning in overall size and weight. However, though, the Hikoki has a max RPM of 3,400 RPM and a max RPM of 4,100 impacts per minute. Now, the Makita, on the other hand, has a max speed of 3,600 RPM, so slightly higher, about 200 RPM higher on the Makita, but it has a much slower impact rate of only 3,800 impacts per minute on the Makita. So again, these tools are very, very evenly matched. There's not a huge difference between these two. Makita slightly smaller, Hikoki slightly more powerful. Very, very similar tools here. So it's pretty hard to really, tell that there's a better one, a worse one here. One thing that does give the Hikoki a huge advantage, in my opinion, is not only the multi-volt battery option, going 36 volt with the batteries, it also is IP56 rated. So that's not a full waterproof dust resistance, but it's pretty close. So you can dunk this thing underwater, you can wash this thing out. If you see my previous videos when Hurricane Ian came through, I took a Metabo HPT impact wrench, threw it outside, and it was totally fine throughout the whole hurricane. Brought it in, put a battery on it, totally fine. You can submerge these things underwater. I have never had an issue with water or dust on any of my Metabo HPT tools. So absolutely fantastic there. So the chuck on the Hikoki is a little bit different than the Makita, really any chuck I've seen so far. So what you do is you put the bit in. It's not an automatic chuck or a chuck where you can just put the bit in and you're good to go. You have to pull the collet out. You push it in again. Now the chuck is going to stay out. You then take the bit and pull the bit out to lock it in. I really don't like that. It's really a complicated system. It's not the simplest. Whereas the Makita is literally just you put it in and there you go, you're ready to go. So kind of odd there from the Hikoki. But let's run a few drywall screws into this board here and I'll show you a little bit how these two impact drivers are different. I'm not going to time these as they're very, very close here. I ran in a bunch of screws. It really doesn't make a difference between the Makita and the Hikoki. They're both pretty much on the same exact level when it comes to running these screws in. But what I'm going to do is we're going to time some of the larger legs and see which one pulls ahead there. So I currently have it in the bolt mode right now, or lag mode, and I got it flashing. I'm curious if that's like a stop. So let's see here. That's actually pretty cool. So that mode actually does stop the impact driver from going in too far. It's not stopping it from impacting, but it's stopping it right around where it needs to be, which is pretty cool. So I can then drive it in right where I want it to be. That's pretty neat. Let's try a few more of those. All right, I kind of like that mode. That's actually pretty cool. So personally, I'm not a fan of the triple hammer impact system myself. I prefer the double hammers instead, as they impact with more force, but of course less frequently. So it's just kind of my preference. From using both for a while, I do prefer just the regular double hammers. I will say on the Makita, it definitely feels like it's going faster, like I have more RPM, and I am definitely not hitting the impacts as fast as I am with the Hikoki. That's one major difference there, as well as I do notice I do have much more trigger control with the Makita. I feel like I can stop the screws before they go in too far with just the trigger. The trigger definitely has a lighter feel on the Makita. Definitely feels easier to control, lighter on the Makita is what I would definitely say is a big difference between the Hikoki and the Makita. So let's grab some larger lag bolts and we'll compare overall power now. All right, so let's drive this really big lag bolt in here. It's not too long, but it's quite a thick lag bolt. I'm gonna actually drill this into a pilot hole that we made with the same exact screws. So I have an equal test for both impact drivers. So I've got them both set to their highest speed and we're still on full bars on both batteries. So let's see what the Hikoki can do. Yeah, that's all the way in. All right, now let's take it out. One thing I started to notice is the Hikoki, the collet on it is having a little bit of grease come out. When I was testing this thing pretty heavily before I made this video, really get a feel for it, I did actually have to wipe away some grease. It's way less than it was when I first got it out of the box now, so I'm guessing this is just from extra grease in the manufacturing process, not actually grease leaking out of something. But I've really put this thing through quite a lot already to really give it a full test, really test out a ton of stuff on it and see how I like it so far. So just thought I'd bring that out for you guys, just so you were aware in case it happened on yours as well. All right, let's give the Makita a shot here. All right, now let's take it out. I will say, between the two, it's quite noticeable that the Hikoki definitely has more power. I'm sure it probably is showing by just a little bit difference in overall time there. Hikoki definitely feels like it's more powerful. I will say the Makita definitely seemed like it bogs down the farther that got down, but the Hikoki seemed like it was totally fine no matter how far that bolt was getting down. It seemed like it kept a nice pace going the whole way. All right, so at the end of the day, which one comes out on top, the Hikoki or the Makita? Well, it is super, super close in my opinion. These impact drivers both have awesome strengths. The Hikoki being a 36-volt tool, being able to get it relatively cheap too. If you're thinking about buying one of these from Japan, the Hikoki is definitely going to be cheaper. Your TD172 is going to run you about $20 to $60 more for the TD172, whereas the Hikokis are generally right around 120-ish, and the TD172s are going to be right around 140, 160. So it doesn't have the price advantage going for it. It is a 36-volt tool, and the Ip56 rating is a huge advantage in my opinion. I do like the tri-LED rings a lot more than the Makita's dual LEDs. It also seems like it saves a little bit more, I wouldn't necessarily compact, but I do like the design on the Makita a little bit better. I feel like you could smash these LEDs pretty easily, whereas the Makitas are kind of set back here around some of this rubber overmold. Let me show you that a little bit closer here. So they're kind of set back a little bit less likely to become damaged. However, though, the Makita has that front glow ring, which I think is really, really nice. The Hikoki collet is not my favorite. It's kind of weird. I've never seen a collet where they make two different adjustments to lock the collet in. That's really weird in my opinion. I'm not really sure I'm a big fan of that at all. You know, the modes, it's got 5 modes compared to the Makita, which I think has like 8 or 9, which is kind of crazy. So yeah, there's a bunch of different stuff to compare on both his impact drivers. It's a very, very close race between these two. They're both super similar. Hikoki being, of course, more powerful, and I think it definitely shows in a few tests in these. It's pretty easy to tell, of course, whereas the Makita has higher RPM, so if you're driving in a lot of fine screws or fasteners, the Makita is, of course, going to pull ahead there. Whether or not you like the triple hammer or just a double hammer design, I think the triple hammer, personally, not my favorite, but I still think it's a pretty cool thing to see some innovation like that in an impact driver, whereas I would prefer the Makita's double hammer myself, personally. Now, when it comes to price between these two tools, if you're buying them from Japan, of course, you know, I already explained the difference there, not too big of a difference. However, if you want to buy them in the US, you want the full warranty, kind of good luck there, because this is still going to be $300 in a kit, and the Makita, you can find it for around $380. That kit is kind of hard to find, where it's just impact driver and the 2 5s. However, though, you can buy this in the newer kits right now. Makita does this really confusing thing where they change out the XDT19 in some of their impact and drill kits to where it includes the hammer drill. So you can still buy this for $400 with a hammer drill and 2 5s. So these tools are not available tool only, and they're not really in an affordable package. So that's kind of a big downside, in my opinion, between these two tools. However, though, if you were to ask me, hey, which one would I bring in my basically everyday work bag? Right now, I think for me, the choice is pretty easy. The XDT19 still wins for one simple reason. Having the control here and allowing me to change the speeds with one hand is the biggest thing for me personally, because I can change the speeds with one hand when I'm switching from a longer, larger fastener, kick up to speed 4, and then switch over to smaller fasteners, kick it down to like speed in between 1 and 3. I can do it with one hand. I don't need to then take the impact driver, take a second hand, come up here and try to see that even if I'm in the light or not. the Makita just simply has a better design for the speed controls, in my opinion. Now, both impact drivers, of course, still a fantastic choice. Having the Ip56 rating on the Hikoki would make this my first choice for anything outdoor, fencing, decking. It's a great choice for an impact driver, which has the Makita, fantastic choice for indoor where you need some extra lighting. You can have that glow ring. I think it's an excellent option. So guys, thanks for watching. Hope you guys take a look at both the impact drivers. They're definitely worth picking up, one or even both of these. And don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. Take care. Have a great day.